Hello, welcome to WFUZ-TV's The People's Voice podcast. I'm Blair Castro, here today with Thomas Jenkins, and we have Mrs. Danielle Duggar in the studio with us today, who's running for Alabama State House District 96. Danielle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I want to jump right in and ask you some about your district in particular. So for people that don't know, could you explain a little bit about what District 96 actually covers?
Sure. It's Daphne, Spanish Fort, Blakely, Bromley, Malbus, and Montrose. So pretty much the whole eastern shore, north of Fairhope, and south of Bay Minette. We grab a little bit of Bay Minette and Blakely and Bromley.
And you are challenging the incumbent who is there right now. That is correct.
Correct.
And what made you decide to run for office and jump into this race for District 96?
Sure. So during COVID, we were, we as in some group of conservatives and I were petitioning our legislature to do something to protect our jobs. My husband's job was being threatened if he declined to take the COVID vaccine. We had our churches closed, our schools were closed, our kids were being forced to wear masks. And my husband was not the only one. All across the state of Alabama, employees were told, take this experimental medical procedure or face termination of your job. So we went up to the legislature. We petitioned our lawmakers to pass, protections for not only jobs, but for the students who were at home facing endless days of virtual school, for the kids, once they did open back up, being forced to wear masks, and our churches that were closed and were told they had to do virtual services. So we were asking the government to address these issues, and I was deeply disappointed by their response. They not only didn't seem to care much about what the people wanted, but they were more concerned with what the lobbyists wanted. And at the time, there were a few groups, lobbying groups, who were pushing hard for the vaccine mandates for employers to have the ability to mandate, because they were facing loss of federal contract dollars if they didn't. So that was really their top concern. And going through that battle and having the outcome being not what we wanted, we did not get permanent protections in law to prevent this type of thing from ever happening again. We did not get protection that would, stop these employers from terminating these employees with any kind of penalty if they violated. So there was a bill that was passed. It provided permanent protection for religious and medical exemptions, but there was no penalty if the employer chose to ignore the law. So I was deeply disappointed with the response. I was deeply disappointed that they cared more about what the lobbyists wanted than what the people wanted, despite over 300,000 emails being sent to our lawmakers regarding this one topic, and despite hundreds of people descending onto the Capitol, marching around the building and asking and petitioning for help from our government. So that's what prompted me to run. In 2022, I ran for this same seat. We did really well for first time running. I got 45% of the vote. It was a 2-month campaign. It was really short, fast and furious. And I'm, running again for the same reasons. We still don't have permanent protections in law, and we still have lawmakers who care more about what special interest groups want than what the people want who sent them there.
Wow. 2 questions. Number one, health freedom is definitely still a hot button issue, I think, even though COVID, seemingly was 6 years ago now. I think these things are very, very much still relevant. And
Yes.
we hear a lot of candidates talking about that now, seem to have, changed their opinion on how they initially stood, which is great, but we should never forget where people kind of were at the beginning.
Yes.
I lived in Florida at the time, and I was actually really proud of our state for that, because I felt like that we really earned the free state of Florida. We were one of the early states to kind of not go with all the mandates. And usually I tend to like what Alabama does more than Florida when I'm comparing things. But that was one issue where I was like, yeah, I think Florida got that more right. So I'm glad you're still talking about it, and glad that people are continuously bringing that up. So my question would be, when you talk about permanent protections, what specifically are you proposing in terms of more permanent infrastructure there to prevent that from happening?
Sure. So, yeah, like you said, Florida did pass a pretty comprehensive bill that prevented vaccine discrimination in many sectors of law. It included housing, insurance, education, employment, labor. The list goes on, but it was COVID-19 specific. So, what I'm proposing, and I believe Representative Ernie Yarbrough has this bill right now in the House, is a conscientious right to refuse act. So, we need permanent protections in law that state the individual has the right to refuse any medical procedure, including vaccines, for any reason without facing any harassment, coercion, or penalty. So that would protect them in the public sphere, the private sphere, also, in labor with their employers, with public accommodations. Remember, we saw where you couldn't enter certain facilities unless you showed proof of vaccination. Now, Alabama did pass the vaccine passport law that banned that practice, but it didn't apply to private employment. And a lot of schools in our state are ignoring it. And we have doctors' offices who are ignoring it. So I would like to see permanent protections to protect informed consent. And that's really what it's all about. It's not about being anti vaccine or anti medicine, it's about informed consent. And any medical professional will agree informed consent is a tenet of the practice of medicine. We have to have informed consent from an individual before any medical professional can give you anything, before they can do any procedure, give you any medication. You have to consent to that. And with vaccinations, for some reason, it's like informed consent goes out the window. So I would like to see permanent protections. The bill that's there right now is HB 12. It's the Alabama Right to Refuse Act, I believe. And that would be a great start. I mean, there's plenty of other areas. And our lawmakers like to say, oh, COVID's over, that's not a problem anymore. But the issue remains. We have lawmakers who are not responsive to the needs of the people. They're responding more to pressure from lobbying, and individual rights are not being upheld.
So I know that you have a background in policy. Can you talk a little bit about why your background leads you to be a good fit for this role?
Yeah, so what I do with the National Vaccine Information Center is I analyze legislation across all 50 states. So we're looking at bills in every single legislature across the country, including DC. And we're tracking bills specifically that relate to informed consent. But with that, we see a lot of parental rights bills, we see a lot of medical freedom bills, we see a lot of insurance bills where they're mandating coverage of certain procedures. We see, you know, just a variety of legislative uh, bills, a lot of bills that we can use, that we can take language from these bills. Excuse me. We have, like in Tennessee, they passed a ivermectin over-the-counter bill. So it's not specifically related to vaccinations, but it does relate to medical freedom, that in a way that if you want this medication, you should be able to get it over the counter with a standing order from a doctor that would be available at certain pharmacies in the state. So that's something we could borrow. There's chemtrail bills. There are bills that would require the labeling of certain foods if they contain mRNA vaccinated meat product. There's also labeling laws for defining foods that contain mRNA vaccinated meat products as a drug. And then that food would be categorized as a drug in state law, and it would be applicable to certain existing law regarding drugs and distribution and labeling and sale and manufacture. So in my role as a legislative analyst, I see a lot of good things that are happening in other parts of the country, and I see what we can adopt in Alabama, how it passes, what are their arguments for and against it, how we can customize it to fit our state, to fit our laws in our state, and how we can really go to bat for that legislation, because you can introduce legislation all day long, but unless you're fighting for it in the House and you're, encouraging and educating your fellow lawmakers to get on board with the bill, it's not going to go anywhere. So you have to really advocate for your legislation and educate your, fellow lawmakers on why this is important, why the people need it or want it.
Yeah, my mom caught COVID and ended up in the hospital, and they were going to put her on a ventilator. And my brother said, give her ivermectin, or not ivermectin, the hydroxychloroquine. And they kept saying, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. They were giving her the remdesivir, and like I said, we're about to put her on the ventilator. He insisted that they give her the hydroxychloroquine, and she had been in the hospital for days and days, declining. Day and a half after that administration of that, she turned around and came home.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I haven't been able to trust the medical system or the political systems really since that time.
A lot of people feel that way. And we saw a lot of death by hospital protocol, unfortunately. So people did lose a lot of trust in our public health systems, in our, medicine, and our, lawmakers and what they're telling us versus what you're seeing in real life. They were telling us like hydroxychloroquine is bad, it will kill you. Ivermectin is horse medicine. Humans shouldn't take it. But what we were seeing in real life was the opposite. So we've lost that trust. And I think it's going to require a lot of work and a lot of honesty and transparency to build it back up so that people aren't afraid to go to the doctor. They're not afraid to listen. If we do have good public health guidance, we want people to believe it if it's real. It's going to take some time to rebuild that trust because so many were killed and so many were severely injured by just lack of education and by suppressing known treatments, intentional suppressing of known treatments.
So besides health-related issues, what are some things that constituents in your district bring forward to you as priority issues?
Going door to door, the biggest priority, the biggest thing that people in my area want to talk about is infrastructure. So we have very congested, we've got a lot of congested roadways. We have just a real need for bridge repair, bridge support, road widening, schools, school expansions. We've got schools across the county that are still using portable units. Classrooms are very full. So really that's the number one thing people want to talk about is infrastructure needs. And then second, people are concerned with the price of everything. And a lot of that relates to taxes. So we have very high consumption tax. So people are feeling that at the gas pump. They're feeling it when they purchase groceries. They're feeling it anywhere they go and buy anything. We're taxed to death. Our vehicle tax to renew your tag every year. If you bought an electric vehicle, you don't escape the gas tax. There's a special tax for you at the end of every year when you renew your tags. So we just have really high consumption tax in the area. So that's the number one thing I hear people want us to do something about. Our property tax is low, and we do have state exemption for, seniors 65 and older, but they're not exempt from county and city tax on their property. And a lot of time, those properties that they purchased, let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago, have doubled, if not tripled, in their assessed value. So we've got seniors who are paying their county and city tax, depending on where they live. They're paying their tax on their home on basically unrealized gains. The home that, the county's telling them their home is worth $500,000. They purchased it for 145 years ago, but they're being taxed on that 500. So there's a process where they can get a cap on the assessed increase every year. I think it was 7% in the county, in Baldwin County, but something's got to be done. We've got to help people on fixed incomes, our senior citizens, our veterans. They shouldn't be paying property tax. Once you own your home, you should own your home outright.
Yeah, we interviewed Chig Martin the other day, who's running for governor, and he wants to see no tax on groceries, which I'm all for.
Yeah. They've reduced our grocery tax at the state level. So they reduced the state tax burden by 2 cents. But we've still got city and county, you have your municipal tax that they add on to the groceries. So the remaining state tax portion, I believe, is 4 cents or 2 cents left. I forget what the remaining portion is, but you still have your city and county tax. So even if we reduced it completely for food products, for groceries, you're still going to be paying a certain percentage of tax based on where you live and where you're shopping.
I was really shocked moving to Alabama from Florida with the massive amount of extra taxes.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know I knew there was some sort of grocery tax, but I didn't know we were also getting taxed on things like toothpaste and like healthcare items. I didn't understand that I was living in a little dream bubble where there was no state income tax. Like you come here and you're getting triple taxed a lot of the time at 3 different levels. And another thing is small businesses. So I feel like we could be a lot more small business friendly, especially in terms of taxes, because you're, like I said, that multiple level of taxation. And then say my hairstylist, for example, she owns, chairs and stuff in there that she paid for outright, but you're still getting taxed just to own it and have it in the building.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very shocking to me. So I'm glad to see you talking about kind of helping with those small breaks for the average person.
And they're getting taxed on their licensing and regulation fees. So, just as a cosmetologist, they have to pay for the license fee every year. Some of these costs can be prohibitive. In small businesses starting up, it's definitely burdens the economy and entrepreneurship by making folks pay to have a license just to work. We also have the business privilege tax. So in Alabama, they think it's a privilege for you to be able to run your business and make a living for your family. So like I said, so many taxes, and those licensing fees are just another tax on individuals. On nearly every occupation, I think it's over 200 different occupations have licensing fees and regulations attached to them.
So I wanted to ask, because I think a lot of people running for office talk about how they want to reduce taxes and how they want to fix infrastructure. What in particular sets you apart from your opponent? Why should people vote for you?
So, I'm a conservative. So as a conservative, that means a few things, not just fiscal conservatism, but socially conservative. My opponent voted for the gas tax. You can thank them, the legislature, for that. That was a 10-cent increase, which on every gallon of gas that you pay for, you're paying an extra 10 cents in tax, thanks to the legislature. And that goes up automatically every other year. So it rises with the rate of inflation and roadwork construction costs. So we've got, that's not something that I would ever vote for. I would never vote to increase taxes as a conservative. I would also never vote to burden or infringe on your right to keep and bear arms. I think we already have too many infringements on our Second Amendment. Red flag laws, gun accessory restrictions, expansion, cannot possess lists. There's just too many infringements on the Second Amendment. The Constitution is very clear. I mean, it says shall not be infringed. And then we have Republican legislatures like Alabama infringing it left, right, and center. That's something that differentiates me from my opponent. Another thing besides taxes and gun restrictions is gambling. This is a big deal for people in the South, for Christian conservatives. So as a Christian and a conservative, that's not something I would ever vote for. I'm not going to vote for casinos anywhere in the state, not just a prohibition on casinos in Baldwin County, but anywhere in the state. I would not vote for gambling. Now, in order to, what folks say is they want a clean lottery bill, right? But this is a fallacy, because in order to get a lottery only instituted in the state of Alabama, you have to remove the constitutional prohibition on games of chance. So Alabama Constitution prohibits any games of chance. Games of skill are allowed. Some games of skill, that's why you see like electronic bingo and dog racing and some sports betting online is I guess a legal loophole, but supposedly those things require skill. Now, games of chance would be like a lottery or a casino, and our Constitution prohibits that. So in order to do a lottery, you have to remove the constitutional prohibition first. That would go out to the people in a referendum that would be on your ballot, and the people of Alabama would vote yes or no to remove it. Then whatever is paired with it in the legislature would be like a companion set of bills. So one would be voting on the referendum, the ballot referendum, which would require 2/3 vote in both houses in order to go out to the people. The other would be, okay, here's our plan. If that passes, this is what we're going to do. So that would be the lottery or the casino, comprehensive casino and gambling package, which we saw back in 2025, which narrowly did not pass. So it was, I believe it came down to like one vote in the Senate that package did not pass. And, that's something my opponent voted for. That's something a lot of conservative members in the House voted for. That's where I differ from them. And that's why I've earned the endorsement from our Alabama Farmers Federation, because they, like me, do not want to see our beautiful beaches and our small town values in Baldwin County be destroyed by the influx of drug trafficking, sex trafficking, crime, and poverty that would come with a casino.
Yeah, I don't think people think about that side effect enough. And that's, I want to say, probably the clearest and most thorough explanation on that entire issue that I've heard yet. I didn't even know that games of chance were not allowed by the state constitution.
Yeah.
I would bet that a lot of voters and constituents don't realize that.
They don't, because I'm going door to door talking to voters, and that's the number one misunderstanding is, well, why won't you just let the people decide? If we want a lottery, we just want the lottery, just let us vote on a lottery. And I tell them, well, you're not voting on the lottery, you're voting on removing the constitutional prohibition. And we know once those guardrails are removed, it could be one session later, it could be 10 sessions later, that a comprehensive gambling and casino package will pass. I just read an article this morning about the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of out-of-state money that is coming into our state to fund these legislators' campaigns to push for gambling passage in the 2027 legislative session. So that's the plan, that's the goal, that's what they're pushing for. You've got PACs that are being called, they're being disguised with names like, the Conservative Action Fund. And they're putting out, mailers for these guys. They're endorsing them. They're supporting them. They're putting tens of thousands of dollars into these races, hundreds of thousands and millions statewide. And they're owned. That entity is actually DraftKings. I just read that this morning. So we've got gambling entities who are pushing a lot of money into our state to try and get our lawmakers to vote yes on this. And what differentiates me from my opponent is I am a no vote. It's not that I don't want to give the people the right to choose. It's, as a Christian, my moral values and what I want for my community, a safe, family-friendly, affordable place to live that's not overrun with casino tourism. That's what I want for my community. That's what drives me to vote no.
So for people in groups that are adamantly and vehemently against casinos on the beach, what can they do? Is there anything that can be done by the people, or is that all up to the representative that they elect?
It can be done. So if we have enough public pressure on our lawmakers, they hopefully would vote no if they knew that the people in their district did not want this. So we really need to do a better job educating people so that they understand what they're asking for. If they're asking for a quote unquote clean lottery bill, And we need to let people know, hey, call your lawmaker. These are the guys who are going to vote for it. They voted for it last time. They'll vote for it again. Let's put some pressure on them. Let's let them know that you don't want this. And if there is enough public pressure, especially during primary season, there are candidates that are not for the lottery and not for gambling casinos. So if you look at like the candidates who are endorsed by Alpha, that's a good kind of rule of thumb. They're endorsing candidates who are not for casinos. So just put some pressure on them during the primary season, and hopefully they will comply.
So for everyone watching, I went to an event or a meeting where you spoke and you broke it down. I think informing people is really the biggest thing that we can do as a community. So she took us through how to go on the State House website, how to find your representative, how to see their voting record, how to find their email, like learn more about them, read their bio. Just do that, people. Like go out there and research the people. It's really, I know it's, overwhelming to sort of navigate these websites sometimes.
Yeah.
But the information is there. And people have gone through great lengths to make it more readily available. We're getting better and better each cycle, I think, at getting the word out about past votes and about, where people's money comes from. It's worth the research instead of just voting for someone because you saw their name on more signs than the other person. I really would encourage you to do that. And she took this whole group of people through this process in a way that really broke it down. So I appreciate that a lot, that you're going out of your way to help inform people, because this is information that we really need to look at a little more carefully as a society.
Yeah, and they don't make it easy to find. So like you saw during the tutorial, the Alabama Legislative website leaves a lot of room for improvement. So committee votes, which are kind of crucial because a lot of time when the bill gets to the floor, lawmakers know, okay, this vote will be recorded. My constituents will see this. So they'll often vote the way they should when it's on the floor. But in committee is a different story. In the state of Alabama, not all of our committee hearing rooms have camera and sound. First issue. Second issue is in the state of Alabama, public hearings are not required for a bill to move through committee. So in other states, it is required. The bill can't pass through committee unless it's had a public hearing, but not required in Alabama. So a lot is done that the public is unaware of. And then the third issue is that the votes that do take place in the committee are not recorded on the website in a way that anyone can find them. So there's no committee report. So when a committee works on a bill, it reports it back to the House either favorably or unfavorably. And with that report, typically in every other state I analyze, it will have a record of who voted for, who voted against, what arguments were made for and against, if there was a public hearing, who came to testify in support or in opposition of the bill. This is all recorded in a committee report, and it's on the state legislature website for the public to see. But in the state of Alabama, that's not there. So if you want to find those committee reports or committee votes, you have to call the clerk of that committee and ask, pretty please, can you send me the information? And if it's recorded somewhere and if they want to give it to you, they will.
We were just me and Blair were talking about transparency and the lack thereof over coffee this morning, and how we've actually been barred from recording certain candidate events just because we want to get a high quality video and audio of it so we can get information out to the people. And then we'll watch other outlets record it, and you can't even hardly hear what candidates are saying. And I wish there was more pro First Amendment, freedom of the press push for full transparency, especially here in Alabama.
Yeah, I agree.
So for the issue you just talked about the website not having the committee information and some of the committees not being recorded, what can we do as people? Can potentially a legislator bring that forward as some sort of bill to make that available on the website? Or is that just things that are not I would love to see that happen. I think that's actually a really major problem.
It is. It is a major problem. It is definitely a roadblock for citizens when they're looking for these things. I can find a lot on the website because I do it every day for my job. But not everyone is as familiar with the website, and they'll get frustrated and they might give up and think, oh, it's just not there. So yes, I believe LSA, our Legislative Services Agency, they, I believe, are responsible for the website and for managing it. And I'm sure there was a tech group that created the website, but I think LSA is responsible for managing it, if I remember correctly at the bottom of the screen. But I'm not sure if that would require legislation or if that's something that we could just work with someone friendly in LSA or within the legislature to try and bring the website up to speed with at least the bare minimum of what other states are offering so that our people can be informed. And if there's pushback and they don't want to do that, we have to ask ourselves why. Do they not want it visible? Do they want it to be obscured and hard to find? Or are they willing to work toward transparency and better functionality of the site? It needs to be more user friendly.
I feel like that goes down to the county and municipal level too, because I'm so tired of hearing, we've heard it time and time again, there's a tech issue. There's a new girl. Sorry that we couldn't get the scanner to work. There's no document or record of this.
Yeah.
Sorry that you can't find like any of this information, even though you're entitled to it by law, and that we had a tech thing that messed it up. Like, technology is very important in today's day and age. So get with it, people,
Yes.
because there's no reason that we should have these repeated technological failures.
Right.
I
I don't want to
agree.
go into a county office and hear, "Oh, we're dinosaurs here."
Yeah.
That's actually what someone told him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was actual quote.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. And it's not that we don't have the money to do it.
Exactly.
So what was it, a $1 billion surplus in the education trust fund this session? And I have yet to look at the general fund to see if there was a surplus there as well. But it's not that the money isn't there to update these things and to use better technology. It's, I believe, a desire not to.
I definitely agree. I did that in Escambia County, Florida, and for the city of Pensacola. I helped build like web portals to access information and make
Yeah.
things easier for people. And then it's kind of what started, my first county commission meeting. I had talked about that here, how I could help and see how I could plug in and see if they had a need for this, because I could not navigate their site like at all. And it has come leaps and bounds since that time. And I've been, given the run through of how to do this, that, and the other. But I feel like the average person should be able to go there and access that, not
Yeah.
someone who has to sit down with the commissioner for an hour and have them talk you through the steps and
Yeah.
the hierarchy.
Right. That's crazy. Well, good. Then I'll call you when I get in office
Yeah.
and we can work on the legislative website.
That's a big deal for me as a web person who's concerned about access to information, and people write it off as not that important. And the smaller the town, it seems like the more they write it off.
Yes.
So at least we have hope on the legislative level. I feel like you might have less hope.
And you'd be surprised. I went through the Pembroke, I think it was Bryant County, Georgia website, the county website that had probate and it had a bunch of other departments in there. And it was really easy to navigate. I was looking for, deeds and documents related to my in-laws after their passing. And it was quite easy to navigate. So, and if you don't know, Pembroke, Georgia is the tiniest of tiniest towns. It has one intersection and it had one McDonald's. And that was about it for a very, very, very long time. And Bryant County is not an affluent county. There's not a lot of money. There's not a whole lot of people there either. And for them to have such an easy functioning website, it just really kind of puts us to shame.
Yeah. So I also wanted to ask about your, I guess, personal life, to hear a little bit about what brought you to Baldwin County, what are your ties here, and what keeps you.
Sure. So my husband's job brought us here. We came out in 2007 when he took a job with Airbus. He got hired for that position when we were on our honeymoon. So we got married and came right out here. We've been here ever since. We love it here. I have 3 kids. We have 3 kids, my husband and I. Our kids have been raised here. So our oldest was 4, I believe, when we moved out here. So they've been raised here. We've done every form of schooling you can imagine. When we first moved, the kids were in public school. We were in Daphne school system. Then we decided to build a home. So we moved into the Bell Forest area and we were in the Fairhope public school system. Then when our third baby came along, we kind of outgrew that house and we moved up to Spanish Fort. And then we were in Spanish Fort schools. So we've really done all the schools in the district. After that, we decided to pull the kids out for a while and do some homeschooling. And then after homeschooling for 3 years, with a newborn and, as she was getting older and more mobile, I couldn't keep up and we decided to go the private school route. So we've really done it all between public schooling, homeschooling, and private schools, which is where my kids are now. My oldest graduated from a Christian school in our district, or right outside the district. And then my two younger ones are in 10th grade and 5th grade, and they are still in school at a private Christian school in the district. So as a mom, and as a mom who's kind of run the gamut of education with my kids, I see where the needs are. I see where, we need state law to protect homeschooling. We need state law to protect our new Choose Act that was passed, the education funds, education savings accounts for these kids. We don't want a situation where these private schools have signed on and become vendors for the Choose Act funds, and these homeschoolers have started using the Choose Act funds, and then the state passes new rules and regulations, dictating what the parents and the schools can and cannot teach, or adding stipulations like, let's say, God forbid, we've got a Democrat governor, okay? Let's say hell freezes over and Alabama elects a Democrat governor, which wouldn't be too far from what we've had recently, but let's say that happens. And they decide you've got to practice DEI, you have to teach critical race theory, or you have to affirm genders or talk about LGBTQ+, talk about gender identity in elementary schools. Otherwise, your school is not eligible for Choose Act funds. So this is not like a far-fetched idea. This would be easy for them to do with future legislation to add extra criteria to being eligible for accessing those Choose Act funds. So that's something that, as a mom, I feel very, strongly about protecting, making sure that if we are going to give access to the state tax portion, the state tax dollars for your child's education, and we have to do it without strings attached.
Absolutely.
The homeschool community, I know, is very concerned about using these funds and what's going to be required of them. They don't want to have to do any, specialized standardized testing each year. They don't want to have to use certain curriculum. They may be using
the whole purpose of that.
Exactly, of educating your child in the home without government interference.
Right.
So that's what we want to protect. So yeah, that's who I am. I'm a mom. I care about education. I care about my family. I care about my community. And I just want this place to be affordable, to be safe for my kids and the kids in our community to grow up in, to go off to school or go off to trade school or start their careers and then come back home to Baldwin County, or to get educated here in Baldwin County now that we have some trade schools and hopefully more workforce development. We want them to be able to build their family here. We want this to be home. And in order for that to happen, it needs to be affordable, it needs to be safe, and we need to have good schools. So that's what I care about. That's who I am. And my heart is here in Baldwin County.
What do we do about home affordability when all of the real estate people and planners and zoners just talk about it as pretty much too bad the market dictates the price? What is the happy medium there?
I don't believe in any government involvement in, house pricing, or, I believe in a free market. And I think the more government involvement, the worse things become. The more unaffordable it becomes, even though, they claim to want to fix or regulate or assist, it usually ends up making things worse. So, the way we can keep things affordable is by keeping taxes low, our consumption tax. We've got to keep that low. We've got to keep property tax low or eliminated. And that way people can afford their cost of living around here. And, we have to have good schools so that people want to live here. If we have bad schools, real estate is not going to thrive because people aren't going to want to buy homes in an area where the school's rated poorly. And we have good rated schools, but some of the achievement rates that we're seeing are not great. So we've got some pretty low proficiency rates despite these high rated schools. So we've got to figure out what's going on there and make sure that this is a desirable place to live, but it's also an affordable place to live.
And I may get a little flack for saying this, but when you're looking at a school, for me as a parent too, it's not just about the most beautiful building, the best technology, beautiful classrooms and nice furniture, even though that stuff helps and is really nice. But you really have to look at the quality of the curriculum and the teachers, as well as the teachers' experience, what they are teaching, and how much face time they get with each kid. So you have to look at the population there and how much time they're actually getting interacted with your particular kid, because I feel like that's something people just think, oh, the school is like brand new and it smells great inside. But there's a lot more I think we need to look at that really determines the quality of a school.
Especially our resource teachers. So I hear a lot from our resource teachers and our gen ed teachers that there's just not enough money put into special education. So you've got one resource teacher. Now that's the teacher that helps the kids who might have 504 plan accommodations or IEPs, individual education programs for students who have maybe learning disabilities or other disabilities. You've got one resource teacher in some of these schools with a caseload of like 100 kids, and they're supposed to be able to pull these kids out of class, to work with them, for them to get different services, for them to do testing in a quiet or, smaller environment without a lot of distractions from other students. If they require all this individualized care and accommodations, but you've got one teacher who's managing 20, 30, 40, 75 kids, it's not going to happen. And then the students who are in the general education classrooms, if you've got 15 kids with 504 or IEPs, you've got a handful who just have behavioral issues, but they don't have any special accommodations. And then you've got maybe a few who are trying to follow along, trying to do, the best they can in the classroom. One teacher trying to manage all of that is a lot. It's a lot. And, you've got to look at that when you're looking for schools as, what is their special education like? Because even if your child doesn't need services, there are going to be other kids in the classroom who do. And if they're not getting those services, it's going to cause a disruption and a distraction for the other students. And it's not the kids' fault. We just need to have more money put into the system because the teachers are stressed. The resource teachers are overworked and stressed. Administration might not always see that or understand it. And they're held to certain criteria. Like they have to meet certain benchmarks and certain, standards in order for the school to be graded appropriately and for the students to progress. So it's just a lot of stress on these teachers who are excellent humans. I mean, to do the work that they do is so hard. And they don't get a lot of thanks for it, but the burden shouldn't just be on them. We've got to get through the school system. They've got to be fully funding special education, and not just kids with learning disabilities, but kids with exceptionalities. They're not getting the time and the one-on-one and the challenge that they need, not necessarily. So that's, another thing that we need to evaluate. Are we putting more money into sports when we should be putting more money into, education, special education, resources, help for these teachers? I know every teacher I talk to would love to have a smaller classroom size, fewer students to manage so that they can give all the attention they want to give to these students.
What has been your twofold question here. What has been the hardest thing about being on the campaign trail?
Okay.
And what has been your favorite thing about being on the campaign trail this particular cycle?
I think the hardest and my favorite are the same thing, which is weird, but the hardest thing I've done this campaign cycle, and I did it the last time as well, but not for as long, has been going door to door. So every day I'm out there for the past 8 months. I have been walking neighborhoods, talking to voters, going door to door, sitting on porches, chatting with folks. I love that. I love talking to people. As you can tell, I talk a lot, but I love getting to know these people. I learn so much from them. I learn what the needs are in the community and how people feel about things through talking to them. And I enjoy, truly, genuinely enjoy meeting people. But the hardest thing has been going door to door and talking to voters, not because it's difficult talking to them. I enjoy that, but because of all the threats all the issues I've had, not, death threats or anything, but, going up to a door, having dogs barking at you and trying to bite you, got attacked once, bit 3 times by 2 dogs. Um, I've been out there knocking in the freezing cold rain, the heat of the end of summer last year, and it's even starting to heat up now. Not today, of course, but I've been out there in the heat, in the sun, in the cold, in the rain, with lightning, dog attacks. I even, I carry a taser now since I was attacked by dogs, just in case I need it, in case there's a dog locked onto my leg, I need something to get him off. I carry a taser now, and I accidentally tased myself while talking to a voter. So that has been the hardest part, but also the most rewarding. I've enjoyed every minute of it except for the dangerous parts. And I just hope to continue to be able to do this up until election day. And it doesn't stop if I'm elected. I want to continue to meet with voters, talk to voters, have coffee dates, have neighborhood meet and greets, just hear from the people that voted for me.
I think very few people are willing to work as hard as you to earn a seat. And I believe that speaks volumes to your character. And I
Thank you.
think very few people are as informed as you when it comes to legislation itself. And these are qualities that we desperately need in office right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So tell everyone where they can find you online or where they can donate, contribute, or learn more.
Sure. So you can go to Danielle Duggar, DUGGAR.com. That's my website. That will link you to the Facebook page. It also has links to donate or just to follow along. And I hope to earn your vote. May 19th is the big day.